Chasity Craft. I'm a literacy consultant here at KVEC, and we are going to be talking about SDI tools for reading and writing. SDI stands for Specially Designed Instruction, and we have developed some tools for you guys to be able to utilize in your classrooms, and hopefully it will make your job a little bit easier. So we're going to go through those today and talk about them, and we're going to practice using them so that when you leave today, you'll be comfortable being able to use those and also help other teachers in your building and ultimately help your students. You're going to look at these SDI tools. We have two of them, one for reading and one for writing. You're going to be able to look at the design of it, be able to utilize it. It's not something that you have to read start to finish. So we want to go through that on how you can look at it and use it. And then also use the gradual release of those scaffolds that you give the kids, be able to take those away as they develop that skill, and then also help align your SDI to your Kentucky academic standards. So you've got a lot of different things going on when you're writing IEP goals and providing the SDI for kids. So we want to help you make it easier to get all of that aligned. So the tools that you want to be looking at improve the quality of the selection of your SDI. You can, because I know that's one thing that's hard to decide when a kid has multiple needs, which one do you need to focus on? So you're going to be able to, that will help you do that, and then also connect the IEP goals, progress monitoring with the Kentucky academic standards. So your resources to help with your SDI, the two on the bottom are the tools that we have developed. And these, to talk a little bit about these, where these came from, we have a task group. If you noticed on the front of the slide, it had a picture of all the co-ops. There's 9 co-ops across the state of Kentucky. So all the literacy consultants came together and worked together to develop these tools. So it was a long process, but the purpose was for us to kind of do all of that research and that groundwork, and to give you something that you can easily look at and utilize in your classroom, because you need to focus your time on helping students instead of trying to dig up resources and strategies and things like that. So we developed these tools for you guys. They connect. You can use those along with the Kentucky academic standards that you have to connect when you're teaching them, because ultimately they have to meet those grade level standards. This is a guidance document for writing your IEP. And these are links, I think, that are in your guided notes as well. And then the IEP and lesson plan development handbook. This you may hear reference to it as a schoolhouse document. If you've heard that, that's what this is. These are all helpful tools for you to be able, when you're trying to write your IEPs, and help decide and design some SDI for your students. So using all of these resources together will help you, to best meet the needs of the students. Just a quick look at this graphic. This was a graphic that was designed by KDE. It just wants to visualize what SDI is. In the middle is the definition of SDI. Right. Looking at the bottom, it's, we talk about equality does not mean equity. And this is just a little visual. I think it's interesting. On the left, everybody has the same box, the same height of box, but the kids are all different sizes. So for the first one, it may be enough for them to see over that fence, but the shortest one, if he give him one box, he still can't see over the fence. So it doesn't help. You got every kid the same thing. You were equal, providing that equal instruction or giving them equal accommodations, but if it doesn't help them, then it doesn't matter. This reminds me of one activity that I think is very powerful that you could use in your classroom. This would be good to use really during the first week of school, and it gives students an understanding of those accommodations that you're going to be given to those students throughout the school year without them. It helps them understand it. And then also for the students who need those extra accommodations, it will help ease that burden of maybe some embarrassment or just different things that students feel sometimes. They don't want to ask for help because they don't want to in front of their peers because for whatever reason. And what the activity is at the beginning, you just hand every student in your class a Band-Aid, just a regular Band-Aid, just hand them out. And then on pieces of paper, you have different ailments. So for example, you would have a scraped knee, a headache, a bellyache, earache, just all different things. Now, I mean, you don't have, if you have 20 kids in your classroom, you don't have to have 20 different ailments. You can just have several different ones, and then they can draw. And it's okay if some kids have the same ailment. It's fine. But anyway, so they go through and then they draw what their ailment would be. And then you would call on somebody and say, okay, what is yours? And he says, well, I have a cut on my knee. And she says, okay, so will a Band-Aid help that? He said, yes. Okay, good, great. Okay, what do you have? Well, I have headache. Okay, well, you have a Band-Aid, so why do you still have a headache? And he said, well, will a Band-Aid help my headache? And obviously they're going to see, no, it's not going to help. So then you kind of go through those things and you say, okay, so these illnesses, a Band-Aid would fix it, but other things a Band-Aid won't fix. So I have to give Susie something different for her headache. I may need to let her close her eyes for 5 minutes because that will help her headache. But if I let Doug close his eyes for 5 minutes because his knee is scraped, it's not going to help him, but his Band-Aid will help him. So then that kind of opens up the conversation that you're how you're going to provide a reader for some kids, extra time for some kids, a scribe for some kids, and things like that. So it kind of gives them a visual on when throughout that year that you're going to give the kids what they need, based on their individual. So this is from the guidance document that you have a link for, and the definition of SDI is what the teacher does to instruct, access, or reteach the student. It describes how the teacher adapts the content, the methodology, or the delivery of instruction to address the unique needs of a student with a disability to ensure access to the general curriculum. And notice this is bolded. It says, while SDI must be provided by a special education teacher or qualified related service provider. So what that, that's a key there. And that, like your speech, OT, PT, or special education teacher are the ones that need to provide that SDI. It's planned, designed, and can be delivered through an integrated and collaborative format or model. So what all that means is what the teacher does for that student. Here's some key points about SDI. It's necessary for the student to make progress toward their goal. I mean, not just beneficial. For example, I've had students before who they didn't meet the eligibility, or they didn't need, it wasn't necessary for them to have a reader, but they needed help with like the comprehension. So they had paraphrasing and they had comprehension goals. So everything we worked for was a reading comprehension goal. Okay. So then I would have, you would see instances to where the other teachers wanted to read to that student. And so, I would say, no, you cannot read to them. And they said, well, it will help them, because they may read a little bit slower and things like that. So yeah, would it benefit that student if they got read to? Probably. They'd probably get finished quicker, maybe answer a question or two more right than they would have had they read it on their own, but it's not necessary. They read well enough to be able to make progress toward that goal. It may not be as fast, but they can do it. It's not necessary. So that's something that you don't want to do. So that's kind of an example. And that's more of an accommodation thing, giving them a reader, but that's just a quick example for you. So the SDI, it has to be planned and designed and delivered by a special ed teacher, period. Or like I said, or a speech OT or PT. The instruction is required. It's to agree or intensity that's not given to all students. What this means is, when I know you all have heard, when you are trying to plan for your pull-out time for your resource room, it's like, don't pull them out of core, don't pull them out of core. You can't, they need reading, they have a reading goal, we can't pull them out of reading. Or you can't pull them out of math to go teach reading or math or anything. So you have to keep them in that core. And so because these students already need additional help, so you don't want to take away anything that they would be getting. So they're going to have that core instruction, so that SDI that they're going to be given is in addition to what they get in their core or their regular school day. And I know that makes it difficult. It does. I mean, that's probably the most frustrating things of having to work out as far as schedule wise, but it is absolutely necessary, because it just doesn't make sense to take them out of, you're really getting them the same amount or less by taking them out of that. So you would be giving them an additional 30 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever they need, whatever's in their IEP, to work on that skill than what they had in their classroom.
Chasity, for some teachers, they may be thinking that, how am I going to get this in? But if there's a spot in their day to where they're getting that core instruction, but now they're actually practicing, or they're going through and doing those problems, this is a good time to pull them to the back if you're doing co-teaching, to actually go over some of this SDI.
Yeah, thank you, Steph. That's a very good point. When you're doing co-teaching, absolutely, because they do get independent work in their classroom. So when they're doing that during that independent work, yes, that is a very good time to do that, because if you're providing instruction during independent work, then that is an additional time. Yes, thank you, Steph, for that. And then the last thing is the instruction is required for the student to learn a device or strategy or material. So if they have a calculator, or if they have an iPad with an app that they have to use as a communication device, they need the instruction on how to use that, then that would be an example of SDI as well. So some samples of SDI would be some time delay strategies, modeling how to respond to visual prompts, Braille code instruction, articulation strategies, fluency strategies, how to transfer from a wheelchair, planning a sensory diet for kids, orientation and mobility strategies. So SDI can look totally different for kids. And so for other examples, this is where you could go and find those examples for you. And now, those are not exhaustive lists in there. So when it's time to sit down and write that IEP, so have you found yourself thinking about, what do I need to focus on? What do I need for my students? I mean, they have several different needs, and they all seem to be, they all need to be addressed immediately because they're behind in this and that. So how do I focus on that to get them ready? So it's hard to determine what we need. So all these things that you see here on the screen, the intensive instruction, the explicit instruction, high leverage practices, SDI, you may or may not have heard some of those terminology or or you may have heard all of them or none of them. But all of these come into, there are just a lot of terms that we hear in special education and what that means, but really, I'm not going to read the definitions to those. You can see them there. You can just kind of read them over them yourself. But the key thing to remember about writing your goal and measuring your and determining your SDI is that they have to mesh. They all have to go together and match. So the IEP has to connect all the way through. And so like your present level, your goals, your SDI, the way what you progress monitor, it all has to connect together in order, well, for it to work for the student. Okay, so now we're ready to look at the documents. So this is what it looks like. You all should have access to it. You can, if you've printed it out, or you can pull it up on your screen, however you want to look at it. So this is the writing one that we're looking at. So it's broken down, and the reading, and they're set up the same way. We're just going to look at the writing one. So the top, the blue is the Kentucky Academic Standards. The green is your categories of your problem. So what is the problem? And this one example is fluency. As you go through the document, you will see the different categories of writing that we look at. So you would have fluency, and then it would be legibility and conventions, word choice, which is in your with vocabulary, sentence complexity and grammar, content and structure, and the writing process. So those are all your different categories. So what is the problem? Would it be a fluency issue, and so forth? The description, the next category, will kind of give you some examples of what the problem of fluency would look like, because you may just have a formative assessment on a child, and you're looking at it and you see the problems, or you might see number of words written, and you don't know really what category that would fall under. So sometimes you can look at your description or your problem indicators first, and then go back to the first column of what category that would fall under would be the easiest for me. So for example, with this one, if you gave them 2 minutes and gave them a writing prompt, and after 2 minutes they had little or no text on their page, or they had 3 or 4 sentences and the rest of your class had, or 3 or 4 words, I'm sorry, and the rest of your class had, a paragraph or 2, then when you go and look at these compared to same age peers, then you're going to look and find, they don't have a lot of text. And then you're going to go over here and it's like, oh, okay, that could be a fluency issue. After you can determine what category it is, then when you are go to write your goal, it's going to match the fluency. And this goal is just an example. Make sure that you use your data and individualize it for your student. So after you get your goal written, and then the next column is for your progress monitoring, your methods of measurement. So these are all, when they're blue, they're live links. They will take you to these CBMs and these probes. You can look at those and print them off however you want to use them. And then these are some strategies. So we have tried to give you a tool all on one document to be able to identify, you can use these also to, as a assessment at the beginning if you want to as well. If you don't have something like that, then you can use the tools to determine your baseline data, figure out what the problem is, be able to write a goal for it, be able to teach it. So we're going to give you some strategies over here so that you can you know, help them develop that skill. And then we're also giving you some methods of measurements that you can use to track your data and be able to analyze that. And we will go through, I will open one up and kind of show you some things as we go through that too. This is an example of a fluency goal. And again, these are samples. You don't want to copy and paste these into your IEPs because you want to make sure that it fits your student. But we did want to give you, a sample to look at. And these fits your the A, B, C, D, E, and F. So you can look here. And so each category has an example of a goal. Okay, so here's the reading one. Like I said, it's set up the same way. The top is the Kentucky Academic Standards bill. But as we're scrolling, so you have phonics, it's the 5 components of reading is how this one is broken up, the fluency, and let's look at vocabulary, because the vocabulary is a piece that it is K-12. That's something that can be taught for any kid, any grade level, and any independent working level that they may be on. Okay, so we're going to look at vocabulary. So let's just say that you're having a student read to you. They cannot really identify, or they can read them. And that's one thing too, I think that confuses, it's hard, it makes it hard to determine or hard to catch sometimes. Sometimes we have kids who get in the 4th and 5th grade before they get even identified as being behind, because they can read, they can pick up an encyclopedia and read it, but then they can't tell you one thing that they just read. So they have their phonics down, but they don't have their vocabulary at all. Or and a lot of times if they can't answer questions about what they've read, it may not be, just a comprehension. It may be a lack of comprehension because of that decrease in vocabulary knowledge. So you just kind of look at these and say, okay, they really don't know what suffixes mean, the root words, they're not real sure. They don't have the ability to use context clues to figure out what words mean. Because I know sometimes we want them to, if they read a sentence and they don't, if they don't know a word, pronounce it, first of all, we want them to try to kind of use the words around it to try to figure out what the word is. And then also for the meaning, that's just a strategy that we use using context clues. And if they're not able to do that, then it could be a vocabulary issue. Okay, so now a description of a vocabulary, vocabulary. So it would be the knowledge of stored information about meanings and pronunciations of words. Vocabulary development is a primary determinant of reading comprehension. Okay, so let's look at vocabulary. If a student was having difficulty with reading comprehension, I would look at vocabulary first, and then, it may or may not be the problem, but I would look at that one first before I would go into something else. Okay, so we've determined it is a vocabulary. So let's look at, our goal behavior. So what we would want them to do is to be able to correctly define words using a sentence or paragraph level context. So we want them to be able to read a sentence or a paragraph and use the context within that to come up with the definition or understand what a word means. And then if you can look at the example here, we've got all the other, these are the components of a compliant goal. Okay, so now I know what I want my kid to work on. Now I want to, how am I going to teach it? I know what they need. How am I going to teach it? Okay, well, let's look over here. So I have a few strategies here. This is a flashcard activity, and how these are set up. This is from interventioncentral.org. That is a very good website. It's for all grade levels. I think, and Doug can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it also has behavior interventions on it as well. But it goes through, it describes what the strategy is, how to prepare for it, materials that you need, and how to conduct it. Sometimes these look a little daunting because you open it up and you're like, oh my gosh, it's 6 pages. But please don't let that deter you from looking at it, because the way that you can see the way that it's laid out, it's just really quick. And Anita Archer, she is the guru of explicit instruction, which is, so she has videos here. This one is specific for a vocabulary instruction lesson for 2nd grade. So it's only 8 minutes, but you can watch it and see how she does it. We all love Anita Archer. She's just phenomenal. So it gives you some ideas there. All right, and then, after you have implemented these strategies, and there's some other resources. There's more than we just put 3 on here because we didn't want to make this document is, it's already several pages, so we didn't want it to be so cumbersome that you couldn't even look at it. After you do your strategy here, you would need to progress monitor it. So you can click on here. These are ways to, this is a really good, Reading Rockets is awesome, but it kind of gives you some directions on how to do those vocabulary assessments on that. And then here's a little checklist sample. Okay, so in this one, and you can make a copy of this and put words. This one is a social studies example. At the bottom is the example of your goal that you can write. When we go through to looking from the start to the end of helping to get a student on what they need to do, we have 6 steps. So the first thing is to analyze your student data. Well, of course, the first one will be to give them an assessment. But so after you give the assessment, you got to analyze that data, see what their weaknesses are, see what they need. So then you're naming the problem indicators after that. So then that's where you can go to your document there and look at that, and that would help you determine your problem indicators. Then you need to identify your standards. So and we're going to work through that. We're going to work through an example and show you how to do that. Match the problem indicators to the standards. Then you're going to write your goal for that student. You're going to determine the SDI, and then you're going to progress monitor that. And then if you see that, we made this a silical visual because then you start over, after you progress monitor, then you analyze that data, your progress monitoring data, and see, are they making progress? Are you going to, do you need to back up? Have they mastered that? Do you need to go on to something else? Make it a little bit more difficult. So those are the things that you go through. Your problem indicators, more than likely, they're going to have more than one. You need to focus on, but it's not realistic for a student to have 3 reading goals. And when they also have a writing goal and a math goal and a behavior goal. It's just not feasible. They're not going, you're setting them up for failure. You're causing frustration for yourself and for the student. It's just not, it's not possible because it's for a year. The timeline is a year. So you want to focus on what you can help them the most. So for example, if they have difficulty reading words, okay, then if they have difficulty reading words, then it's probably going to be a fluency issue for sure. It could be phonics, and it could also be phonemic awareness, because if they're not hearing the sounds, they can't produce the sounds, they can't blend the sounds, and they can't, so then it's also going to be fluency. So you can't have phonological awareness, phonics, and a fluency goal. So that's why you got to narrow that down and see which one if they have phonemic awareness, but it's a phonics issue, then you want to focus on the phonics, and then the fluency will come later when you fix the phonics issue. First, analyze the student data. So let's look at John here. Okay, John is a third grader functioning well below grade level in reading and writing. He presently reads at a first grade level, has difficulty putting letter sounds together into words and answering comprehension questions. He struggles to spell words phonetically, which impacts his ability to adequately express himself in writing. He is able to copy from the board and do grade level math. So think about that. That's the data on John. So let's think about that. Now here is his performance data. So he was given the DRA twice, one in August, and in August he was on a level 2, a kindergarten level, and in November he went to level 8, which is mid first grade, and we said he is a third grader. So he's even though he's progressed, he is still below grade level. He can read 90% of the first 305 words. He can do the letter sound correspondence. He can recognize consonant vowel consonants 60% of the time. Beginning to segment and blend phonemes at 5%. Okay, so there's your outlier. He can do letter sound 90%, but when he's starting to segment and blend those phonemes, that's where some difficulties fall in. Distinguishing between short vowel sounds and spoken words is 20%, and he orally pronounces consonant blends at 30%. Okay, so based on that information, what will be some of the problem indicators for John? For me, I think it starts coming out that being able to blend the phonemes and segment those sounds. He cannot distinguish between those. So that is something we may need to address. And that's all the way back into phonological awareness. Okay, he can recognize consonant vowel consonant words in a word family 60% of the time. So I probably want to address that too. The good thing is he does have letter sounds, so he does know that. So we just need to work on blending. And then that also goes into the phonemes too. It's in your guided notes, and it's also in that drive. But this is just a quick sheet for you to have just the problem indicators, the description, and the problem. Just really quick, you can have that out. So thinking about John's data, let's look at this training document here that you can use and determine his area of need. We were given the problem indicators. We know those. So I would start in this category over here and start going down here. Like unable to produce one-to-one letter sound correspondence. No, he has that. So, okay, let's go on down here and see. Looking at the phonological awareness. This one is blending the syllables. Okay, so this is a good example of him being all over the place. You can see you kind of go all the way back to the first one. Okay, he can, the second dot here, unable to count, produce, blend, or segment syllables into words and the individual sounds. So that is the difficulty. So with him being in third grade, you're probably wanting to tend to go to that fluency because, with him already being in that grade level, because those standards, is pushing for him to do higher level reading, then you probably may tend to want to do that. But then you want to look at that discrete skill. And if he can't do this, then that might be something you want to look at, which is backing all the way up. So instead of writing this is the example I was talking about earlier, the phonological awareness, phonics, and fluency, then you may want to first address the phonological awareness. Now, when you write you know, if you do write the IEP in August and you make this phonological awareness goal for him to be able to do that, and if you're providing that SDI and you're bombarding him with these services, you know, he may master that goal by Christmas. Great. That's phenomenal. If he does, great. Make a new goal, you know, or, I mean, that's because you want to move them as quickly as you can. So just because, you know, you put that in there, that doesn't mean that it has to stretch out for that whole year. I mean, if they can master it, by all means, you know, change it. Okay, so now that we've identified that indicator, we've narrowed that down, let's look at our standard. And these are pulled straight from the Kentucky Academic Standards. I just put it on here just to kind of save time, but I mean, this is exactly what it says in the standards document. You got that, you guys have a link to. And if you go down, it's a reading foundational skill. And here it is: orally produce single syllable words by blending sounds, phonemes, including consonant blends. So that's how you're going to direct that to the standard. Now, if you notice, this is not a third grade standard. You know, he's not functioning on third grade level, even though he is in the third grade. So that's one of those things. And I think it's kind of, it's a misconception sometimes when we talk about having to match our goals to standards. It gets confusing sometimes because we think, okay, John's in third grade, we have to match his skill to a third grade standard. And that is where some of the confusion comes into play. But that's not what that is saying. It's just a standard of what they need to work on. So, like, for example, with John, we are looking at first grade. This is from the first grade standards. It's still aligned to the Kentucky Academic Standards, not just third grade. It's this first grade, because this is what he needs in order to progress to that third grade standard. Okay, now we're ready to write the goal. Okay, so here we go. Orally given, well, I'm not going to read it. You guys can read the sections. We always want to make sure when we write the goal, you got all the components that make it compliant: A, B, C, D, E, and F. Okay, you got your audience, what he's going to do, 3 consecutive trials. That's how we're going to measure it, how often. Okay, now we want to determine the SDI. Now we know what he needs to do. We've got a goal for it. How are we going to let him meet that goal? Okay, this is where your schoolhouse document will come in handy. If you want to, this is a code that you can scan with your phone that will pull it up. So these are from pages 4 and 5 and pages 17 out of that schoolhouse document. So after we already know about John's SDI, or his information and his goal, here's what we have determined that may need for what John may need. Okay, so we want to look for our strategies. We want them to be evidence-based. And so let's look at explicit instruction. And it gives you the definition of what explicit instruction is. And it has, 7 pieces that goes into that. That's just kind of a guide for you that kind of gives you some background on what explicit instruction is. And if you have heard, and you may even use this in your classroom already, but if you have seen or heard people say, I do it, we do it, you do it, that is part of that explicit instruction. You want to model it for them first, and then you want to do some guided practice and do it together, and then you do it at the end, then they do it independently. And with our students, or any students that may need that we, or even the I. It's not going to be 1, 2, 3, one time each. It's not more than more times than not, it's not going to be one time. You may have to model it more than once. And then when you get stuck in the we do, you may have to do several examples together before that they can do it independently. Okay, so let's look at the strategies for, these are basic reading. So if you look at some, this is what it looks like. This is right here what the teacher does. This is what I was talking about earlier, the supplementary aids and services. This is what they would use. And sometimes that gets confusing. People get confused between the two. A graphic organizer is not SDI. That's a supplementary aid and service. The instruction that you provide for that student to use a graphic organizer is going to be the SDI. Okay, so let's look at this. So you have all of these strategies down here that you can use for basic reading. Okay, so let's look at that top one there. So graphophonic strategies. It's visual and auditory, including letter sound knowledge, phonemic awareness, and decoding. So graphophonic strategies, if you saw that on a kid's IEP, would you know what to do? If you want to think about, we call it the stranger test, because a lot of times students move from different schools, different districts a lot of times. And I know everybody here has probably inherited IEPs that, you know, at mid-year or, you know, things like that. So if you got an IEP and it had graphophonic strategies, would you know what to do? Probably not. So you want to just make sure that you're specific on exactly what you're going to do for that kid. The graphophonic strategies, then you're going to write this instead. Okay, this is another tool document that you have that you can, these are just specific literacy tools and strategies that you can use. This is another a document. It's in your guided note. You want to have explicit instruction in phonological awareness. Okay, and then we've got it listed here what that would be, what all of those would fall under phonological awareness, and blending phonemes. Okay, now here it's just real simple. You just put boxes in them. I mean, just you could draw them on a whiteboard, sheet of paper, however you want to do it. You can make them pretty, but then you can just, you know, use counters or Legos and push stones into that. At the beginning, and blending phonemes, you're only looking at sounds. Okay, so you're not really, this is helping them distinguish between each individual sound. So for example, if you had mom, and then they need to be able to push a coin or something into each and go, mom. They got to be able to hear that. And then they got to be able to blend it together. So this little activity here, it will describe what that is really quickly, what you would need, how to set it up, and things like that. And that's what you would put as your SDI. So in John's, for when you put SDI, instead of putting the graphophonic strategies, you're going to put blending phonemes. Okay, now after you've done that, then you're ready to progress monitor. This is an example of a blending checklist that you can use to progress monitor. Okay, this is an example of a direct measure. Of course, after you do your progress monitoring, you want to just, I mean, you don't just do it and put it in a folder and, you know, move on. You want to really take that time and look at, you know, analyze the data. So let's go back and look at that really just for a second. So if, for example, you can put here where it says student response, then you might want to maybe spell it how they say it. So for example, if they had if they said gat, then instead of saying goat, then you would want to write G-A-T so that you know that they called it gat. And then that way, when you go back, then you know that they do not have the vowel teams. They don't know the rule that OA says O, or, you know, things like that. So that kind of helps you pinpoint where their mistakes are. So you analyze that, and then that way you'll know how to take your next steps. Start all back over. So what we want to do next is go through this process and analyze Keisha. Okay, so on Keisha's worksheet, you have the notes here. She's in 7th grade. She can decode accurately in isolation, but it takes her a long time to read grade level work. She can read short phrases or word to word, but when reading a full passage at 6th grade level, she often tries to read too quickly and begins to make guesses. As a consequence, she makes numerous errors due to incorrect vowel choice and or neglect of middle or end sound parts. This often affects her ability to answer comprehension questions. Okay. So let's look at her data here. Okay. Her most recent CBM fluency, she has 119 words correctly per minute at 5th grade. So we said she's in 7th, so she's on the 5th grade level there. She can decode 7th grade multisyllabic words at half the time. Her reading comprehension indicates that she can infer at 30% accuracy when she's independent reading. And if she is read to her, it's 80%. So that is a big difference. That's interesting. Is it one of the thinking strategies that we talk about when we talk about comprehension, or is it another underlying foundational skill that she's lacking? That's what we need to decide. Okay, so now we have to look at the problem indicators. Okay, this is on this document right here that you guys have. So look at this, and based on her data, look at your problem indicators. So on your worksheet, the step 1, it says analyze Keisha's data. So that in that note, you could just kind of make notes there, kind of what you think it might be. So as you're looking at it, you know, like I had said, I was just kind of thinking out loud that it appears to be comprehension, but is it a phonics? What is it? So I'll give you just a couple minutes to identify the problem indicators for Keisha. She has some blending sounds. She has difficulty decoding multisyllabic words. So that could be an issue. If you have difficulty blending words together, then you focus on being able to produce the word. You're not understanding what that word means, or even comprehending what is the information the text is giving you, because you're concentrating so much on sounding out those words. So it breaks it up. The pace is really slow when you read. The words per minute, she's roughly, as she's at the 5th grade level, she's reading about half on the 7th grade. And she can understand when it's read to her. So if the words are read to her, she's understanding it. So, but she's only reading, she can read independently about with 50% accuracy. So it's almost like she's breaking up the text. She may be focusing too much on trying to figure out what the words are on the page. So when we were working through this, we were looking at maybe we could focus on the fluency piece of it, because it says that she decodes with 50% accuracy. So she's probably focusing on decoding rather than comprehending the text. That's why her comprehension is so low, because she's just working really hard on decoding those words. She is reading, below grade level, so it's probably slow and great effort and also using those decoding skills. So we decided, just for the example, is to focusing on the fluency for that. After we determine that, look at your Kentucky Academic Standards and see what standard that you can align her problem indicator to. Help you out here a little bit. So we will use the fluency so we can all kind of be on the same page. Read fluently with accuracy, speed, and prosody on grade level text to support comprehension. Okay, so they got to be able to read it with purpose and understanding. They got to be fluent to and use context to confirm or self-correct word recognition and understanding, and then also be able to go back independently and to know to go back and reread something if necessary. If they didn't really get it the first time, I didn't catch that part, let me go back and reread that. So that's your big chunks there for fluency. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And we are looking, and if you notice here, this one is the same for 1st through 5th. So they're going to read, so, she's in 7th grade, but, we said she was roughly in the 5th grade level, but then also it could be all the way down. So we want her to be able to read grade level text fluently on successive readings. So are we going to start her on a 7th grade level text because she is in 7th grade? Because it says read grade level text fluently. So is that do we want to have her, is that what we're going to say? Start her out with a 7th grade text? No, it doesn't. She's reading 5th grade independent level for her. So we're going to start her at the 5th grade level because it says grade level. That is really confusing sometimes. So it's the grade level that she is functioning. So we're going to start her at 5th grade. Now, she may, by the time the IEP timeline is up, by the end of that year, she may be on a 7th. We want her to be on the 7th grade level. That would be awesome. But we're going to start her at 5th grade. Okay, next we're going to write our goal. Okay, so now that you have that information, if you don't care, what I would like for you to do is to write a goal for Keisha using the fluency standard, aligning this fluency standard with her problem indicators, and write a goal with these components. See what we can do for her. So we're going to give her our circumstances first. So with this one, we're going to start with a 5th grade passage. Okay, then we have our audience, which is Keisha. We're presented with a 5th grade passage. Keisha will fluently read 195 words correctly per minute. Now, 195 would get her to the 90th percentile in 5th grade. So that seems doable. It brings her up to benchmark at the 5th grade level, and then you would be ready to move her forward to continue on it to close that gap. So fluently read, that it would be your behavior across 3 consecutive probe sessions. So she's not going to be able to, she's going to have to read 195 words 3 times in a row. Okay, and then we're going to measure weekly by a weekly or reading fluency probe. So you can have, and again, those these measures that you can use are in that document. Now that we have her goal, step 5 is determine the SDI. How are we going to get her to reading fluently? You get these from your IEP guidance document. So we're focusing on fluency with Keisha. So again, these are pages from our schoolhouse document. It has the explicit instruction definition, and then under the basic reading skills, there we have the fluency strategies. Over here are some examples of strategies that you can utilize to help increase those fluency. So let's just look at this choral reading. Again, Reading Rockets. You'll see a lot of the Reading Rockets links in these because they are just phenomenal. It tells what it is. It tells you when you can use it. So this one, you use choral reading during reading. How to use it. You can use it individually, with small group, or with a whole class. So this is something you can use with any group arrangement. It tells you why to use it, how to use it. There's even a video here that would give you an example of what that looks like in your classroom. Over here is some more fluency strategies that you can click on as well. So paired reading is another one. And it's set up the same way. And that's another reason why I like this website, the Reading Rockets, because all of these strategies, it gives you the definition, when you can use it, how to do it, and or how to use it, I'm sorry, why, and then it gives you the directions on how to set it up and how to implement that strategy. And then it gives you this example of what that's going to look like. So this one, the paired reading or partner reading, it's called, you use it with small groups. And for those, the students that, you can help with if there's regular education teachers, this will be a good tier 2 strategy that they can use for kids when they're trying to give them some interventions in their classroom. And then another one is the shared reading. This one you can use anytime, before, during, or after. You can use it with any size group or individually, but it's set up the same way. Okay, so when you put your SDI on, when you list her SDI, you're going to say fluency strategies, and then what that means is what we had showed, the choral paired reading and repeat. And then here's another one, time repeated reading. So those are all fluency strategies that you can use to help Keisha with her fluency to meet her fluency goal. This is an example after to progress monitor. So we've gotten all of the other steps. Now we're on step 6 for progress monitor. See where they're at, where their weaknesses are, what adjustments do you need to make in your teaching. Start back over again. So that's how, and like I said, I know it does sound daunting, but because that's just essentially for one goal. So you have multiple goals per kids and a lot of kids. So, but it does become easier, and when you have this kind of like a roadmap that's laid out for you, then it does make it a lot easier. So the next thing that I wanted you to do is to try to do one by yourself. This will be David. You should have access to David's worksheet. So this is what David's worksheet is going to look like. So just to review the steps again, you're going to analyze his data, name the problem indicators, identify the standards, write the goal, determine his SDI, and progress monitor. So the first thing I want you to do is just the first 3 right now. What do you guys think we should do for David? We have to determine, are we going to make a goal for decoding and a goal for fluency, or do we need to narrow that down and just focusing on one? So now we're going to look at writing his goal, determining his SDI, and how are you going to progress monitor that? When I was looking at this, I have this pulled up as I'm looking at it, but I had forgot to talk to you guys about when we didn't identify the standards. So when we decided that we would do decoding or fluency, and you go to your standards and look at that. So I'm looking at it, and it says his MAP score places him in mid-year second grade. Okay, but then when he did the reading accuracy, so fifth grade, he's 70% accuracy, which is a frustration level. So you're kind of like, okay, but he has some in the fifth grade. And then you have mid-year second. So where is that going to fall? So it could be up to you if you want to just use that information and try to pick. For this activity, that's all we have. But if David was my student in the classroom, I would administer a couple more additional short reading probes just to hone in more of where he is specifically, because it's like second grade, third, fourth, fifth, where is it? So that would be something I would do, because I would want to get just a little bit more information. But for now, I was going to say we'll just go for third, because it's mid-year second, so we're going to use third. So I went to third grade, and the phonics and word recognition, know and apply grade level phonics and word analysis skills with decoding. So with third grade, you have 3 here, and then the fluency. Okay, which is like we'd noted before, the fluency is the same throughout. Okay, so this would be with the decoding. We would want to probably hone in on this one right here if we were using the phonics one. So you come down here, and then if you were using the fluency, then I would probably focus in on this one right here. So then with that, then I would be ready to write my goal. Well, this is the feedback for if you can scan with your phone. But if you have any questions or need help or assistance with anything after we leave here today, you can email me at chasity.craft@theholler.org.